This is the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast, and we're the Aces Up Your Sleeve in relationships, from romantic to workplace, parental to platonic, your relationship with yourself, and everything in between. Let us, two autistic, aspect, kinky therapists, be your secret weapon in neurodivergent life.
And here's your disclaimer. This is not therapy or therapeutic advice, and we're not on the clock. What you'll hear are our thoughts on different topics, what we might do in your shoes, and how we've supported others through similar situations.
Hello and welcome to the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. I'm Cade.
And I'm Sabrina.
And we are once again joined by the wonderful Jamie Roberts. Jamie uses she, her pronouns, and she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, and neuroqueer. She's the author of Mindfulness for Teen Anxiety and the new book, Neurodiversity for Teen Girls, which came out on April 1st. She's the founder of Equilibrium Counseling Services, a teen mental health center, and NeuroPebble, a neurodiversity continuing education website. She is the neurodivergent therapist throughout social media, and she's an active speaker on neurodivergent and teen topics with the goal of becoming who she needed when she was younger. Jamie, we're super excited to have you back and to talk about teen stuff with you.
I'm so happy to be here. It's always a great conversation with the two of you. And of course, teens are my favorite topic to talk about. So I think this is going to be a super fun conversation today.
Even the cat's
Zeus
excited.
is here. He's like, me too.
Love that for you, Zeus.
Joined by Zeus the cat as well. Well, you and Zeus are joining us for our final episode in our 3-part mini-series for teens. So we're talking about teens, as Jamie knows, but also listeners, as you might know, because on May 16th, all three of us are going to be participating in the very first virtual GEMS Neurodiversity Summit. And our focus this time is going to be on working with autistic plus ADHD teens as therapists. So if you're a therapist listening, you might be interested. Sabrina's going to talk about how to engage quiet or bored teens in therapy. I'll be covering how to build a strong sense of self as a teenager. And Jamie's going to be talking about navigating those changing and challenging expectations as you go from a teen to an adult. Should be a good time.
I hope so.
Yeah, super exciting. Yeah. I know we've all been talking a lot about that, and so our brains have been very much in teen space for the last couple of months. If you snag the very important participant ticket, you'll even get to interact with us live, because we're going to do a closing Ask Us Anything panel. So if none of those 3 original topics are really going to cover the burning question that you have, you're going to want one of those VIP tickets. To learn more and to register, you can hit pause, or you can keep listening and head over to neuropebble.com/gems-summit. Or you can click the link that's in the show notes when you're done listening. And this is the last week to purchase tickets at an early bird rate. Tickets go to their normal price on April 13th. So if you're listening to this right as it comes out, you are an early bird, and there's Zeus knocking things over.
Now.
What good timing.
He's ready for the summit.
I love that for him. Wonderful. And this is the bonus. If you are watching our podcast on YouTube now, you can meet Zeus in the flesh, or in the fur.
In the fur. Here he is.
Love it. Well, today our questions do come from therapists, so that's kind of fun. We'll jump right into our first one here. It says, can you talk about the importance of downtime and alone time in high-masking autistic teens? How to help them and their parents or family support that need? And how to recognize the difference between helpful alone or downtime and downtime or alone time that might be signs of isolation?
Such an important question. The thing that I have to remind myself, or remind parents that I'm working with, is teens are at school for 7 hours in a day. That just that's just the sensory piece alone, about being around that many people, the noises, the smells, the touch of just bumping into people in a crowded hall, just is this constant wearing down of the energy, or of just that tolerance. Not even mentioning the social pressures that are going on, the academic pressures, the trying to stay engaged the whole time. They are exhausted by the end of the day. So it really makes a lot of sense to me that most teens across the board, whatever their neurotype, are going to need downtime after school. And then especially if we have an autistic teen or a high masking teen, they're really going to need that transition time or a reset time. So I think a big part is having a conversation of like being specific about how they reset, and are we being intentional with trying to reset, and when and how that's happening. I know for myself, I have to keep going. If I stop, I will not start again. So if there's something to do after school, I have to do it. And if I stop, I won't start. Others have to have that break. So it's not a one size fits all. How do we do this with our teens?
Yeah, I think there's something really important about like what you talked about in terms of how much energy school itself takes. There is something really specific to each individual teen about how much energy that takes, but also what they need to do to recoup that energy. Sometimes I think there's a really quick movement into like, oh, downtime that's on a phone is bad because it's brain rot and it's doom scrolling and it's all these things. But for extroverted, like high masking autistic teens, hello, I still needed the social engagement to get my battery back up, but I wasn't ready for that to be with family, and I wasn't ready for that to necessarily be anything that wasn't in the online space. And so I think it's going to be also really getting to know like just because a teen is autistic does not mean that they are introverted, or does not mean that like their downtime is going to look like resting in a dark room. It doesn't mean that it's not going to look like that, but there's going to be lots of different interpretations. And so it's really a matter of like, can you sit down and talk with your team about how is this feeling? Do you feel isolated right now, or is this recharging you?
I think that is one of the best things you can do, is provide that space that feels comfortable and safe enough for your teen to tell you, hey, I need some downtime, or hey, I've been feeling really isolated lately. Can we go do something, or can I go see some friends, or go to an event, you know?
An example I use often is like with a phone battery. It starts with like draining the battery, but like we know if you're using your phone, depending on what you're doing, it's going to drain your battery faster. If you're live streaming, watching something, the battery's not going to last. If you're just texting, if you're just playing a game, like the battery is going to kind of vary and change. And there might be some days where you have to keep your phone connected to the wall the whole day in order to even use your phone. There might be days you forget to charge it overnight and it's dead from the beginning. And there's days that the battery can last the whole time. But starting to gain that awareness of like which activities drain the battery and which activities like allow the battery to sustain throughout the day. And that brings more like awareness and specificity to one, the teen just knowing themselves, but then also like the family unit knowing what somebody might need, which is going to change day to day.
Absolutely. I'll also say that like downtime and alone time, or like whatever that recoup time looks like, is really important regardless. And also if you're finding like, oh, my teen needs like all like 13 hours that they're not at school to recharge, it might also be worth looking into some accommodations, some, maybe an IEP, maybe something so that they're not coming home so deeply depleted at the end of every single day. Like Jimmy said, like there's definitely going to be days regardless. And there are going to be ways that you can say like, this is really consistently battery is at like phone is dead. Time to recharge the whole entire way. That's probably like not great for the overall nervous system and like well-being of that teenager.
Absolutely.
I thought it goes along with like, how do you help parents or their family support their needs, managing expectations, and looking at the teen you've got in front of you and not the teen you think you should have in front of you. Even if you've got like a house full of 4 teens, they're all going to have very different needs and abilities and different levels of recharge that are needed.
I think too that there can be a period of experimentation. The teen may not know what they need yet. You may not know. And we know that it all varies and changes day to day, week to week. So even I frame a lot of things as like, let's do an experiment. Let's see if this helps. Let's see if this changes it. Let's try this for this week and see if the outcome is different. And so it doesn't have to be this, like, it'll forever be this, but like, just for these days, we can let it go if it's not the thing. And we can keep doing it if we like it.
Yeah. I also think it's important to think about like, there are ways in which like this is also part of the stage of development, right? Like a little bit depending on the age of your teen, but like the whole point of this stage of development is individualization. They might be like having downtime or alone time or things like that from you, but again, they might be on their phone with friends or playing video games with friends or like writing notes to friends, you know, like they might be doing a lot of actually very social things, or they might be doing a lot of things that are in efforts to form that identity, which is a hallmark of this stage of development in the first place. That, like, yeah, you're the family. They don't want to hang out with you. That's absolutely to be expected during this time as well.
Mm-hmm.
When do you both think it becomes more of that, like, we should be worried because of the alone time or the recharge time, or, you know, haven't seen my teen in the last 14 hours on the weekend and I go in there and they're staring at a wall? Is it recharge, or is that like, oh, maybe we need to explore this?
I think these questions are so hard because it's going to vary, right? It's going to depend so much on each person, but also what's going on for that person at that time. So it's hard to give like a solid answer. But I think that if you haven't seen them in 14 hours and they're just staring at a wall, that's probably a sign that something's not great. Could be. More likely, yes, but not absolutely. But I think that's going to come with like having those clear conversations of like, at what point should I be worried? Or like, at what point do you want me to step in? Of like, so we can talk to people about what that cusp is so that teens can identify it for themselves and it can be a part of the conversation. So we're not interrupting something if it doesn't need to be. But if they need that, like us inserting, we know when that line is crossed and what that looks like.
Yeah. I also think that there's like, just because it is something that might be a sign that something's going on, remembering not to make that, oh no, my teen is broken. Or like, this now means that like, it could be, again, oh, that's a pretty intense recharge session needed. And so even if it's still recharging, it might be like, that's a lot of recharge need. Maybe it's time to go again, like look at an IEP, maybe talk to a therapist, maybe see if your teen like would like to do something or have something else going on. So like for me, I can get very like sit, stare at a wall dissociative if I don't have enough social engagement, which it feels like really weird to people sometimes. But that like it's actually really helpful if I find myself like really not able to sit down and like watch a show, play a video game, do something on my own. It usually means that I need to text someone and be like, hey, will you come hang out with me? Or like, can we go somewhere and do something? And so maybe it's, hey, teen, do you want to have friends over? Hey, teen, like, is school taking everything out of you right now? And how can I support you in this moment?
Yeah, because sometimes when that teen is staring at the wall, it could mean they need some social, they need more stimulation. And other times it could be that they've got such a creative imagination that that's how they're recharging. They're just sitting there kind of daydreaming and zoning out, and they enjoy that. So I love that you both were like, let's just get more curious, because it could be a warning sign, could also be totally natural for that teen.
Exactly. And there's like very much people really, really focus with autism on like, okay, they're overstimulated, but there's actually a lot of us who also get understimulated, and so finding a way to close that circle out is really important.
Ultimately, it sounds like communicating with the teen and figuring out, is this scary for them? Does this feel bad for them? Or does it feel good for them? Sounds like what we're all kind of agreeing on.
Yeah, I think that's going to come down to most of our answers in general is like treating your kid with the respect you would anyone else and like asking them, hey, what are you needing? And hoping that they're in a place to respond or waiting until they are in a place to respond.
Yeah. The second piece, that we were asked is, what do you recommend to parents of neurodivergent older teens and young adults that show, okay, here's the wording, that show no motivation for moving towards independence, taking into account the complexities of society right now and how next to impossible society makes it for young people to survive?
Yeah. I saw you feel a certain way about that wording. I have a hard time with the like, if you're already saying like they're showing no motivation for moving forward, what would be the context in which they would be showing motivation? Like, why would you feel motivated to go into the completely shit job market and try to figure out housing costs that are astronomical? I'm not motivated for that, and I do it.
I would take it even a step back from that about like, what is independence? Like, what is that expectation for what independence looks like at that age? And is that one age appropriate, neurotype appropriate, disability appropriate, circumstance appropriate, to really delineate that out? Because if we lump it all together about they're not moving towards independence, what does that mean? That's a really big, broad question. Is that living alone? Is it having a full-time job? Is it like, what does that mean? Or is it that they're in charge of like feeding themselves? Is it that they're in charge of like doing their own laundry? Are they doing chores on a regular basis? Like, what do we mean? Because the motivation for each of those things is going to be very different. And the drive for it is going to be very different, which I think is going to really vary how we encourage or how we support or what the path is going to look like for someone.
I often also think about like adults get into this headspace of like independence. How are they going to be independent? I'm like, what interdependence are you offering? Like, what support? Like, I remember when I was like starting to get ready to move out of my mom's house, like she almost didn't let me get a cat because she was like, it's gonna make you want to stay here longer, and we don't want that. And like, that's just fucking painful to hear. Like, that's, I mean, partially just how shitty my mom is, but like, it is honestly a big part of this, like, oh, but you need to be ready to, like you were saying, like leave and do all these things yourself and stuff. And it's such an opposite thing to like my uncle, for example, who has this policy of like, any of us can go and live in his house at any point in our lives. But you have to either be in school or working. And like, that doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, contributing to bills or anything. Just you have to be doing a thing. And then you're welcome to just stay there. And that motivated me so much more to want to like do things than did we just want you out really badly because independence.
Right, or comparing them to their peers who, you know, well, your older sibling was able to move out or get a job or whatever by XYZ time frame or age. That's not very motivating, and that can really affect the self-esteem. Yeah. I also find a lot of my teens and young adults, they are trying to get a job, and there is just nowhere to get a job. So if you're asking them to go,
full-grown adults are trying to get a job, and there's nowhere to get a job.
That
so many folks, so many people are getting laid off right now, and that doesn't mean that those positions are now open. Also, a lot of the folks going through layoffs have AA or bachelor's degrees or higher. Like, our teens don't usually have that. Some of them may have their AA already, but it's just a lot of pressure. And when they go out into the world and they're trying really hard to get a job and they keep getting rejected, often that rejection sensitivity spikes. And so then they've got the employers going, no, we don't want you. They've got their parents going, can you get out of the house? Can you go be independent? And they've got their friends who are also struggling and trying to figure out where they fit in the world, if they've got friends. I also work with a lot of teens and young adults who their goal is not really to find work or move out. Their goal is to maybe find love and friendship.
Connection and belonging. Yeah. I also like... Go ahead, Jamie.
Jigs. I also noticed, like, we talked about work, but with school, especially if we're talking about neurodivergent kids, they've been in school for 12 years as a full-time job. And if they had tutoring after school, if they had therapy after school, if they did other like more intensive programs, if they were in extracurriculars, they've been working full-time for how many years now? And a lot of the teens that I've worked with are at burnout at 18, 19, 20. And the idea of starting a new project, starting college, starting a career path, starting an independence is just this new mountain to climb when they feel like they just reached the peak of this enormous mountain they've already like cussed. And if it's work or school and they have a learning disability or they have a processing disorder, school doesn't sound so enticing. And so I think the way we talk about education, one, the necessity of it, depending on the path they're going, the timing of it, a lot of research shows that when people go back to school, they actually do much better. Because they're more engaged and more focused on that specific thing they want to do, but really being open to the path looking very different. That there's like, where are the shoulds coming from, that this is the next step? What are all the alternative next steps that we could create?
Right. And also, does independence, whatever that means for you, actually even align with your values? Like, it'll be these same parents who are like, yeah, like we need a culturally supportive, social support based community. Hey kid, get off my couch. Hold on now. We something got lost in translation. We're not quite where we thought we were. And so I think that there's remembering that like the push for each individual human being to be living in their own home with their own set of bills and their own vehicle to maneuver to and from that home and like all of that, that is all capitalism. I want 20 mortgages instead of, and rent payments instead of 5. And I want 20 individual water bills and electricity bills and gas bills instead of 5. And like that's what the system, right, is asking for. And so there's also the ways in which like really making sure like, is this values aligned or is this societal pressure for you to have a quote unquote successful teenager or child or what have you. And then also, because this question asks about neurodivergent older teens, young adults, and not just autistic or ADHD ones, that like some forms of neurodivergence do not suit themselves well to that at all. And the push for it is actually like antithetical. So like, again, my mother and her bullshit about like, you can't have a cat because I want you out of my house. Cool. My BPD is in full shutdown mode now, right? Like that's a huge rejection, both for my RSD and my ADHD, but also for my BPD. And so like, what neurodivergence does your child have? And then like, how can you work within whatever system that neurodivergence creates to support them in identifying what the goal is and then reaching that goal? And that might be independence, but it might also be interdependence or living in a co-op or living with friends or something that is more community based.
I think changing up what the conversation about the certain goal is, or changing the language or exploring the language. I have had clients who are like being pushed to get a driver's license, and maybe they also want a driver's license. And often the motivator is when you first say like, I don't know if I want it, people are like, oh, but you'll have so much independence. Some of my teens are like, I don't want that independence. I don't want to drive on the road. The roads are scary. Like that is not a motivator to have independence by having a license. But you know what is? This going to the beach by myself so I can recharge. I would really like to not have to ask somebody if I can go to the beach, and I would like to go to the beach. But if you said to me, well, you could have independence and then you could take yourself to the beach. Like some of that is the language we come down to, but how we associate with the tasks or to make it connect to the person in front of us. So like speaking to like this parent's question about like, yeah, there are ways we want to support people in whatever their next step is, but what is their next step in their eyes as well, and how to reach that, and what the in-between steps might be if we're not looking for the license was achieved, but like, are they studying for the test? Are they talking about it more? Do they want to do practice driving? Like each one of those are pillars leading to the next step.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are so many ways to get to the beach that don't involve the driver's license. If your teen or young adult is like, look, I don't have the executive function for that, or it's too overwhelming from a sensory standpoint, or whatever it is that they're worried about. There are a lot of car accidents that happen. There's tons of things they could worry about. How about like safe bike riding? Do they want to try that? Would they like to learn how to use the bus or transit system? How do they want to go about maybe setting up carpools? Do they want to learn how to use Uber or Lyft or something else? And then exploring, well, how will we pay for that? What would that look like? There's so many ways to get to some of those goals. And I think you're right, Jamie, the more we shift away from, well, in America, you have to have your own house, your own white picket fence, your own driver's license, your own car, your own mortgage, your own retirement fund, shifting towards like, what do they want to make of their life? And even if those goals are like more in the here and now than in the future, that can still help build them towards being able to access the things they do want in the future as time goes on.
I'll also say, so like this question, right, comes in from a therapist who's looking to support, like to talk to parents about this experience that parents are having, right? I would also say, like, within whatever your role is, so if your role is therapist to the teen client, then that's going to look different than if your role is like the family therapist, for example, right? But talking to the parent about like, okay, where did this expectation for you come from? Also, like this question on like taking into the account all of these things, pull up Zillow, pullupapartments.com, show them how much rent is. The amount of parents that I have worked with who like literally don't actually know how much it costs to rent or to like live alone right now, because they've owned their home for however old their child is or longer, and like all these things, literally show them, like, they know that grocery prices are going up, but they don't realize, even just like in a city near me, one of my friends, her gas bill in the last 3 years has gone up by $150.
I didn't live alone for the first time until I was 33. I had roommates that entire time because like it isn't sustainable. It is so expensive to live alone, and like it wasn't even my choice to live alone when it happened. I got divorced and I was like, oops, I'm living alone for the first time, didn't plan this. It is amazing and I love it now, but it would not have been my choice at like even then. So looking at, even if we're looking at prices of stuff, does that mean they have to have friends that they could split it with? Are their friends in a place? Or are they going to be living with strangers? And what is that whole barrier piece too?
Exactly. And so like really helping them actually tangibly walk through like the world is different than it was. Showing them like, here are the jobs that your child would be qualified for. We're not even talking about interest yet, qualified for. And here is the rent that they would need to come up with. And we're not looking even at what it would cost to have internet and phone and like all these things. And also remembering that like streaming services are trying to kick people off of sharing accounts now and like all these shit, right? So how do you as an adult who has been budgeting for, again, however old your young adult is, do you know how to make that work on this budget? Why the fuck would your teenager? And you can have that really frank conversation with a lot of care, especially if you have rapport with the parents, which I hope you do, to say like, not only like, is this, again, maybe not within your value set, or maybe not something that like you're envisioning for yourself, you're doing it because that's the societal thing, but also it might literally not be functional.
I think having those conversations early on in a very just like frank, matter of fact way to start introducing these concepts to like older teens or young adults about like, hey, just got the heating bill. Look at how much this is. Interesting. Like, and you start introducing, this is how much it is, or this is how we pay it, or hey, do you want to help me do this, to start kind of hand holding or like interdependence of how do we do this together, so it's not a foreign thing of like, now you have to do this all yourself, but also how do we start integrating some of those responsibilities in a controlled, safe, like non-punitive way that's just matter of fact. Hey, the grocery bill came in, you had these specific things, do you want to contribute? Or hey, we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, to create the space that they can start owning some of those responsibilities. Because if we don't create the space for them to step into it, there's no reason for them to, right? If we're handling everything, why do I need to take this over? But also, if you just take it away and you're like, now it's yours, it can feel very punitive or like stuck or not their independent choice.
Yeah. I'll also just like, the final thing that I usually do with parents in this place is remind them that their kid wanting to stay at home or not having a motivation to leave is actually a sign of like usually decent parenting. Like, my mother was completely fucking wrong. I wanted to get absolutely the fuck out of that house, because I was being emotionally abused in that house, and so was she, and it was hard to watch. And so like, there's actually a lot of like safety if your kid is like, no, I've got it pretty good here. That's not a sign to say, well, how do I make it worse for you here to get you out, right? That's a sign to say, oh shit, like, I have like created an environment of safety for my kid, that they now feel like safe and comfortable and supported enough to, maybe it's not working, maybe your kid is like trying to go into art or like content creation or something that you don't see as like a viable money making solution, but it's that they feel safe enough to be creative, right? That they feel safe enough to actually go into a thing that they're really interested in, because they don't have to be scrambling for $22 to pay, to rob Peter to pay Paul for next month's rent and all this stuff. It's like, no, you're actually giving them something really, really important. It's just that our society thinks that it's bad.
I love that you said that so much. That is so accurate.
Awesome. I think that's a great place for us to wrap up here so that we can go and record our bonus content. We're going to probably talk more personally about our own experiences as neurodivergent teens. So if anyone's listening and wants a little insight on that and what we wished our parents, teachers, therapists, coaches, the adults in our lives knew how to support us better and what knowledge we wish they had, we're going to go chat about that.
You can expect new episodes weekly on Tuesdays. You can find Cade at Cryptid Learns. You can find me at Radical Insights Consulting on Facebook or Instagram. You can add a .com to either of those at the end for our website. You can find our friend Jamie Roberts over at Neuropebble on social media. Neuropebble.com is the website. And you can follow the podcast on Facebook or Instagram at Aces Up Your Sleeve Pod so you can interact with us, see when new episodes release. If you have questions, please visit neurokink.org/AUYS and send them our way. Don't forget to check out Jamie's book that's available now, actually, by the time this releases. It's called Neurodiversity for Teen Girls, and it's available online now. It's full of simple strategies to help teens express difficult emotions, manage sensory stuff, and deal with the daily social dynamics. We're going to head over to Patreon to record Hit Me Again. I just saw you put the book cover up. Do it again. It's a great
show
cover.
it again.
Yeah. That's Neurodiversity for Teen Girls. Super exciting. We're going to go over to Patreon now and record Hit Me Again, our exclusive guest bonus content. It's over at patreon.com/Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. But you can also listen to it wherever you stream once you join our Patreon. It has its very own private podcast stream, and tiers start as low as $4. By the way, it sounds like Apple upcharges people, so if you're using the App Store, go to a computer and sign up for the real pricing, and don't go through Apple's big annoying bullshit, even for those of us who are unfortunately Apple. All right, we'll see you at Patreon.